I remember feeling like I had tried absolutely everything under the sun and just could not see results in my body. Every diet, every workout thing, every little fancy new gym. I tried everything and nothing felt like it worked. And then one day it just clicked. And the 5, 6 months that followed, my body changed drastically. And I'm here to tell you exactly what I did. Now, some of my personal story is that I have a history of disordered eating. I'm not going to talk about that too much in this video, so that's a trigger for you. Don't worry, I'm not going to get too far into it. But in high school, I really struggled with that and a little bit into college too. And I think just in general, I've always been someone who's struggled with physical insecurities. Somewhere along the way, I think it was in college when I did my first body pump class at a local gym, I decided that health and fitness was my new thing. I was going to be a health and fitness girly, and that's how I was going to get the body of my dreams. And I wouldn't say that it worked at the time because what I was doing was still some version of restricted eating in some form or another, and these really intense, extreme workout programs that were just not healthy and not productive for my body. But I think the main thing when I look back is that I was so focused on doing this so that other people would see me in a certain light, whether it was boys that would be attracted to me. I don't know. It was all very externally motivated. I wanted other people to view me a certain way and see me as the fit girl, the thin girl, the cute girl, whatever. At the end of the day, my motivations were extremely shallow. And I carried a lot of that junk into adulthood. Even in my 20s, I was living in New York City and I had all of these cool, fashionable friends. And it just kind of reinforced this idea that the way you look dictates your value. And I was very consumed by the thoughts of that all the time. And so I carried a lot of these habits into that phase of my life too, where it was either eating in a way that was completely focused on calories and not nutrition, or doing workouts that had no regard for my actual state of well-being, but much more so how many calories can I burn. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't supportive of my mental well-being. And it led to burnout. It led to moments of just being forget it. I'm going to just eat whatever I want and I don't care. It just was this vicious cycle of feeling like I was putting so much energy into this thing, constantly thinking about it and constantly trying to take action to that end, and yet still not really seeing results, or not seeing results that I could sustain. Maybe I would, tighten up here and there, lose a couple pounds here and there, but 1 week and later it would change again. So when I got pregnant, which was about 6, 8 months after we got married, and I was, as the kids say, I was bridal skinny. And then we went on our honeymoon, and then we had this season of just loving being a young married couple. And we went on vacations and we did all this stuff. And then I got pregnant, which was the plan all along. We got married a little bit later in life. And so we knew we didn't want to wait a long time to get pregnant, but I got pregnant. And let me tell you, that rocked my world. I went from working all the time and eating super clean and all this stuff to suddenly I felt so sick. I was so nauseous that entire really first trimester and a half. And the only thing that I wanted to eat was bread and crackers. And I laid in bed literally all day long. I was working from home and I would just work in my bed like this. And so naturally I gained a good chunk of weight during that season, not only because my habits changed so drastically, but also because I was growing a freaking human being. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that wasn't difficult for me. I had moments of feeling really insecure and sort of just grieving the fact that my body was changing in ways I wasn't used to and didn't necessarily love initially. And I think your first time, or at least my first time going through it, I hadn't learned to embrace it yet. It didn't feel like this beautiful gift from God. I felt like all these women talk about pregnancy as, oh, I'm one with nature and I'm Mother Earth and whatever. And it's I didn't feel that at all. I felt nauseous. I felt sick. I had heartburn and I felt huge. And it was really difficult. And then somewhere, I think it was later in my pregnancy, it probably adjacent to our 20-week anatomy scan, we learned that our baby had a heart defect and something just clicked for me. It just changed. And I was so less focused on what my body looked like and so much more focused on how can I care for this life that is already going to come into this world with some things working against her. She was going to have heart surgery. And so it became a high risk pregnancy. I was doing weekly scans and the non-stress tests and all the things. And I just started to think about my body in a totally different way. And I was still gaining weight, right? That third trimester, I just puffed up like a blowfish. I was so full of fluid and just puff. And I was not thrilled about that. That's not a fun thing to see when you look in the mirror, but I just wasn't obsessing over it anymore. And was for the first time in my life starting to think about my body as a vessel, as something that was serving another life and not just something that I wanted people to view in a certain way. Then I had a baby. And oh man, labor and delivery was crazy. I will talk about that maybe in a different video, but it was intense, obviously. And then I had this baby. I went through the emotional high of just oh my God, what just happened? This is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. Oh my God, I love this baby, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 days later, your hormones drop. And I was like, what happened? And looking in the mirror and being like, oh my Lord, what what am I looking at here? What's going on? Because that immediate postpartum phase is so racked with emotions and hormones and feelings and newness, especially as a first time mom, that the way I viewed my body very quickly went back to like, it has to look a certain way. I have to figure this out. But it was sort of anchored by the fact that we were still in this baby health world of preparing for her surgery and just I was trying to keep her alive, like just in terms of any new mom, the anxiety and the fear and the sweet newborn nuggles and like all the things. There's so many emotions that thankfully outweighed the emotions that I was feeling towards my body, which were not overly positive. And I was still trying to nurse. So I was very focused on what I was eating to make sure that my supply didn't dip. I was eating a lot of healthy fats. I was eating a lot of protein. And it was much more about like, am I getting enough in and not about how can I eat less, which was kind of my historical view of this stuff. So almost inadvertently, I kind of got into this mindset that was very much focused on balance. It was just this internal motivation that I had never felt before because I wanted to be healthy for my daughter. I wanted to have more energy. I wanted to be able to nurse her. I wanted to be the best version of myself for her. And I think the combination of that intrinsic motivation, plus having just gone through multiple iterations of a season where I viewed my body as something for someone else and not something that dictated what other people thought of me, that combination just sparked something in me that has changed the trajectory of the entire life and my relationship with my body, with food, with exercise, and my career, because now this is something that I do for a living to try to help other women get to this place too. So to get into the nitty gritty, here's exactly what I changed based on this different motivation that I now had. Let's start with nutrition. So in the world of trying to make your body look a certain way for other people's benefit or for the external motivation that comes from how other people view you, what our culture teaches us, which is not true, but what our culture has told us is that you have to cut out food groups entirely. You have to be 100% on it all the time. And you have to eat like whatever the new fancy fad is, like whatever the new fancy diet is, that's the thing that you have to do. When I came at this from a totally different approach that was much more focused on like, how am I going to feel and how am I going to be able to operate for my child? I stopped doing all of those things. I didn't cut out a single food group. I didn't try to eat perfectly 100% of the time. And I sure as heck didn't try to follow any sort of like crazy fancy fad because one, I did not have time for that stuff. And I was not even like in the algorithm that was telling me what the new thing was. But two, it just wasn't supportive of these other goals that I had, like having energy, having a milk supply, like yada, yada. So instead, I just went back to the basics. I'm a certified nutritionist. I was like, okay, let me think about like, what did I learn? And the 101 of healthy eating is like, eat a lot of protein, eat a lot of healthy fats, eat a lot of fiber because fiber is that girl. I love fiber. I will talk about it all the time. Fiber is so important, which really comes from fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, the wide variety of foods that come from the earth that aren't processed, overly processed. It's just really basic stuff. But when we get into this world of trying to think about what's the next shiny object in the world of diets and nutrition, we forget it. And the other big shift here was that I wasn't doing this perfectly and I wasn't asking myself to do it perfectly. I had just birthed a baby, so you better believe I was enjoying a cookie every now and then because it felt like I'd served it. If we went out to dinner with friends, I mean, when they were so little, they just sit in the carrier so quietly and perfectly, and you can go have dinner with people and it's so enjoyable. And then they grow up and you cannot really do that anymore. But I digress. When we would go out to dinner, like I would enjoy, I would have a glass of wine. I would eat the bread that came to the table. I wasn't being crazy about it, but because 80-90% of the time I was focused on the less processed foods that were going to be supportive of my overall goals to be the best version of myself for my daughter, it balanced out really well. And it felt easy. I don't mean to oversell it, but it genuinely felt simple and easy because I just wasn't thinking about it that much anymore. Anytime I approached a meal, it was like, okay, well, have I had enough good fats today? Have I had enough fiber today? No? All right, let me grab some of that. Like it was about adding into my diet and not taking out. And that was a complete mind shift for me. The other thing I was very focused on in this world that's like nutrition adjacent is my hormones. Obviously, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, your hormones are whack. They go on a complete and total roller coaster and it's kind of a ride, I'm not gonna lie. So when I was in my post season, I was very focused on making sure that I was supporting my hormone health to just help me feel better and to help my body do what it needed to do to heal and recover and get back to having more energy and all the things. So I'd focus a lot on eating foods that were rich in omega-3s, lots of leafy greens, lots of whole grains, like things that would support my hormone balances internally. The other big thing here, and I want you to hear me if you are someone who is interested in losing weight, having a drastic caloric deficit, so eating way less than the number of calories that you're burning each day is really hard on your hormones. So I did not do that. And it also is really hard on your milk supply if you're trying to nurse. So I avoided that entirely, which was really helpful, I think, for me, for my hormone balance and also just my mental well-being. And the kicker on this is that sleep is really important for your hormone health. Obviously, in newborn phase, and let's be honest, my daughter is almost a year and a half now, and she's still not a great sleeper. So, like, sleep in motherhood is a challenge, but it's also so important for your hormone health. So, you have to find a balance and do your best. And if that means, you're going to wake up in 3 hours when that kid wakes up, but if you go to bed now, you'll at least get those 3 hours of sleep versus if you stay up and doom scroll, you're only going to get an hour and a half. You need to go to sleep early. Like, do your best within reason of being a mom, but as much quality sleep as you can get is so, so good for your hormone health and your mental health. Now let's talk about fitness. So all the workouts that I did were a combination of at-home strength training workouts and walking. Those are the two things that I think every woman should do. It's the reason I started my company and started my app, WellMamas, because I wanted moms to have more accessible workouts that they could do from home that weren't going to take 45, 60 minutes and weren't going to require them to work out 6 times a week. I couldn't find that when I was on my postpartum fitness journey. I couldn't find an app that gave me accessible, realistic workouts that also were giving me good nutrition advice, that were also giving me like mental health related stuff, because motherhood feels like you have to tackle all three or get ugly. So I just created it. I was like, well, if I can't find it, I'm just going to make it my own. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a certified nutritionist. I got my pre and postnatal certification because I wanted to be able to support other women that were in my phase of life. So I launched this app called WellMamas. We have at-home workouts. You get a new meal plan every single month, which comes with a weekly grocery list organized by section of the grocery store, which is the best part. And then we have an entire section around mindfulness, whether it's deep breathing or we have a whole library of meditation specific to motherhood. It's a holistic wellness app. That was my goal. And it has been wonderful, both in my own journey. I use my own app, which I don't know what that says about me, but I just love it that much. And so many women and moms that are joining that are saying, like, this is what I've been looking for, which is so exciting. So all this aside, fitness, I was doing a combination of at-home strength training workouts, which are all the same workouts that I program in the app, and then walking. My method is trying to get in 4 strength training workouts a week, and then I have step goals on the other days. So it's not a combination. I'm not trying to hit 10,000 steps every single day. I can't do that. But 4 strength training workouts at home. I use dumbbells and minivans, generally only 30 minutes or less, because I don't have time, right? Like, I'm a mom. I do not have time. So that's what worked for me from a fitness perspective. No crazy intense programs, no crazy intense classes, because the competitive girly in me would have come out and I would have done too much too fast and pushed myself too hard. I was focusing on recovery. I was focusing on rebuilding my abs and my core strength, rebuilding my overall fitness levels that I lost during pregnancy because I was so thick for so long. But I think the main thing here is, like, do what you can. If what you can get in today is a 10-minute walk, amazing. Do that. If what you can get in today is a 15-minute yoga class that you found on YouTube, amazing. Do it. You should do the small window of things and know that small steps are going to lead to big change over time. Don't get overwhelmed with trying to start this whole new plan. Do the little things that you can do. I would love for you to try out my app. You can do your first week free. See if those types of workouts are beneficial for you. If you like the 10-minute ab workout I have in there, wait, 10 minutes, you can find 10 minutes in your day. I really believe. Just do what you can do and give yourself grace in the other areas. Lastly, and this is the biggest thing I was missing in my long, lifelong journey of getting this wrong, is I finally started incorporating some practices to support my mental well-being and my mental health. I think mental health is like a very trendy thing to talk about right now, but not only is that important for all people, but as a mom, it is so easy to neglect that part of your life. And if you are neglecting that, trying to be a mom, trying to be human, and also trying to lose weight, that is a recipe for disaster, because that's too much. You're asking too much of yourself if you're not balancing it with some really healthy mindfulness practices. For me, this looks like a lot of prayer. It looked like a lot of gratitude lists. Whether it was like on my phone or just with my husband, we would say it out loud to each other when one of us was kind of in a funk. I started therapy, which I'm a huge believer and huge fan of. That was really beneficial. And I started doing things like meditating. And when I went on walks, I would listen to peaceful music and not a podcast about new trendy things in the fitness world. I tried to do as much as I could to ground myself, because the other areas of my life were so crazy. And I highly recommend that you do this too. When you're taking care of yourself, when you're taking care of your heart and your spirit and your soul, it's going to be way too jarring to then suddenly go into this world of like, well, I can't eat that because I'm trying to restrict my calories and I'm not allowed to have bread. And it's like, no, you get in the habit of supporting yourself and your well-being, which is completely counterintuitive to the part of you that's like, I must work out 7 times a week and burn 1,000 calories. Those two things are not aligned. So if you can focus on your mental health, it is going to significantly reduce the temptation to get back in that black and white thinking of skinny or nothing, which at least was how I thought about it for way too many years. The last piece I'll mention on this is the other benefit that comes from supporting your mental health as it relates to your health and wellness journey is emotional eating. I think emotional eating is so prevalent and so many of us struggle with it and may not even know, because it doesn't always look as black and white as like, oh, I'm sad, let me go eat a tub of ice cream. For me, it usually manifests as like, I'm so stressed out, I'm not making dinner tonight, so let's just order something. That's emotional eating in its root form, because I am dysregulated emotionally. And so what do I want? I want easy, quick, comforting food that tastes good. Like, that's emotional eating. There's other manifestations of this, of course, but I think it's important that we recognize that as we support our mental health and find other ways to re-regulate our emotions, the emotional eating piece will fall away because it's easily the least effective format. That emotional eating, if you are sad and you eat a cookie, the mental boost or emotional boost that you get from that goes away very quick. So when you adopt these other practices that have a much more effective and long-lasting result to them, like journaling, like prayer, like gratitude, like counseling, the emotional eating becomes less attractive because you're like, that doesn't even work. So that's the other piece I would mention as it relates to your mental health is it's such an added bonus that the more you focus on that, the less the emotional eating will come into play and the less the overly restrictive side of you will have a voice in the conversation. It's hard. It's hard to find balance and it's hard to find a true wellness path, especially as a busy mom. And especially if you've spent years and years and years and years, like I did, adopting these very unhealthy patterns, habits, ways of thinking. It's a lot to unlearn, but it's not impossible. And it is so worth doing. If you hear nothing else from this video, please hear that consistency in small changes is going to be what leads to the big results. If you want to change your body in 5 months, then you're going to have to do this in teeny tiny little increments consistently over the next 5 months. It's not going to be because you decide today that you're going to have some drastic new journey and change everything about your life, because we all know that's not realistic and it's only going to lead to burnout, and then you're going to feel like a failure and the whole cycle is going to repeat. But if today you're like, okay, how can I get more protein into my diet? Can I fit in a 10-minute walk? Can I do a 5-minute meditation? What are the little bitty things that I can do today that will support my health and wellness? And then tomorrow, you do the exact same thing. Then the next day, you do the exact same thing. And then maybe one more thing. Small stuff sustainably over time is what leads to big changes, and is also what leads to unlearning all of the crap that you learned from culture and stupid magazines and America's Next Top Model and whatever else when you were growing up. And at the end of the day, you need to make sure that what you're motivated by is coming from within. Intrinsic motivation is going to be 10 times more valuable in affecting change than external motivation. If you're motivated by what other people view you as, or what value you think you're getting in the world because you look a certain way, that is always going to fail compared to an intrinsic motivation. I want to be healthier for my kids. I want to be healthier for my partner. I want to feel better about myself. I want to feel more confident so that I can show up differently at work. Intrinsic motivations that are for you and for your circle of people is so much more effective, so much more long lasting, so much more valuable than external motivation. Because at the end of the day, who the heck cares? Your value doesn't come from your body. And what other people think of you is not important. And whether or not some guy thinks that you're super hot is really, really not the end of the world. This is me telling that to myself 20 years ago. It's just not that important. What's important is how you feel and how you show up for the people around you. So that is how I transformed my body in 5 months, and the ways that I'm continuing to adopt a new health and wellness lifestyle, and the things that have been foundational for me in starting my app, the WellMamas app, which I would love for you to try out. 7 days free. You can find the link down below. Also, if this is the kind of content that you're interested in, this realistic, holistic idea about wellness, especially in the context of motherhood, I would love for you to subscribe to this channel. It's new, but it's growing, and I'm excited about that. And I want to meet you. So comment down below. Tell me about yourself. How old are your kids? And where are you at on your fitness journey? Also, if you can like this video, that would be super helpful just as I'm trying to grow and learn the algorithm. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.